Okay. Hello and welcome everybody. My name's Jane Stevenson. I'm one of the board members of Empower Amsterdam, and we've been running these weekly chats for the last 9 months, ever since the first lockdown when we all were locked in our houses in March, from March onwards. Um, they've been very successful. We've had some amazing people delivering some great topics. I'm really pleased to have this one as our last workshop of 2020, and I think it's very, very relevant. I'd like to introduce Ines Fernandes, who is a digital wellness coach, who's going to talk about, yeah, how to stay healthy in this remote environment of being online health. So I'll hand it over to you now, Ines.
Perfect. Thank you, Jane, for the introduction. So I didn't write it down actually. So I'm Portuguese, living in Amsterdam, in Iburg, more specifically. And I will share my screen. So during the presentation, what I want you to do is, if you have any questions, you can write down them on the chat, and then we go through the questions at the end. Okay, so because I will talk about several concepts, so it's nice if you are able to just write it down and then don't worry about it, and then you won't forget. And nice that you can use the thumbs up, so thank you. So I will share my screen. Perfect. Okay, so today what I'm going to be talking about is conquering working from home distractions. So it will be focused mainly on distractions, okay, distractions and attention. But you can always ask any questions you might have related to working from home in general. My presentation will take about like 30 minutes, and then we do some breakout rooms and some questions at the end. So just let me introduce myself. So my name, as I said, is Ines. I work in ergonomics and employee well-being. So some time ago, I started my own company. It's focused on employee well-being. Of course, what we wanted to do is create healthy, connected working cultures. So how can we do that also when working from home, right? Which is a little bit trickier than before. I studied my master's degree on human movement sciences, and then I did more studies on more digital well-being topics, okay, and mental health. So today, let me see. Yes. So today we're going to talk about distractions. So there is this really nice book that I highly recommend. It is called Indestructible, and it kind of goes throughout a process for you to become undistractable, as Nir Eyal says. So if you have time and you want to read something different, this is very interesting. And I will take his framework to explain distraction a little bit, okay? So imagine a line that represents the value of everything you do throughout your day. To the right of that line, you have positive things happening. And to the left of that line, you have negative things. So on the right side of the line, it's actually traction, okay? So imagine this as a continuum, you have traction. So think of all the actions that you do during the day that draw you towards what you want in life, okay, towards your values. And then on the other side, you have distraction. So that's the opposite, is everything that you do that pulls you away from where you want to be. So you have on one side traction and the other side distraction. Everything that we do, all our behaviors are actually, they happen because there is a trigger, okay? So we have internal triggers and external triggers. For example, if you are hungry, right, during the day, you feel this sensation of hunger, and then you go and eat a snack. If you're cold, you have a feeling that you're cold, you go and put your jacket on, right? So those are internal triggers. And then you also have the external triggers. So the external triggers are more like everything that beeps around you. And nowadays we have our digital devices, so all the notifications that you get, for example, if your TV is around you, you have this urge to switch it on, it could be, or of course, if you have your phone next to you vibrating, you're gonna change your attention towards your phone. So all of this is actually what leads you to be distracted. So you have the internal triggers and the external triggers. Think of it as traction helps you achieve your goals and distraction leads you away from them. So my goal here is really bring you an understanding of what happens in our brain when we get distracted. Why do we get distracted? For us to build strategies and preventing ourselves from being distracted, right? So that's the main idea. When we let a trigger guide our direction, our behavior, what we're gonna do next, actually what happens most of the times is that we end up multitasking. So imagine you're writing or finishing this really important report, and all of a sudden you get email notification, right? So what happens is that you get an email notification on your screen most of the times, on the top right corner, it doesn't matter. Or two things can happen, or you look at the message, the notification, and you ignore it, or that pops up and you click on it. So can you write on the chat actually if you click on it most of the times or you ignore it? So just say ignore or click, and let me look at. And there is no wrong answer. Like, it's perfectly okay. Like some people are better at ignoring, some people are better at clicking. There's no wrong answer. So I have two ignores. Let's take that. It doesn't really matter if you ignore the message or not. What happened is that you already switch your attention from what you were doing to the message on the screen, right? So either way, your brain already switched attention. What happens is that this is what is called multitasking. So most people think of multitasking as doing two things at the same time, right? Some years ago, it was super nice to be able to multitask. Actually, what happens to your brain is that your brain switches the attention between one task and the other task. So it doesn't do two tasks at once, it switches between tasks. There are some exceptions to this rule. So for example, when you're walking on the street, you can be on the phone perfectly fine, right? We even say that it's good to move throughout the day. So have stand-up meetings, just go walk outside. All of that is good. And the reason for that is because walking is already an automated task. So your brain is not spending a lot of time on really thinking of the walking task, so it's already automated. There's no problem. However, if you're having a very tough conversation, what happens when you're walking? You suddenly stop, right? So you're having this tough conversation and then suddenly, you start stopping and then you're focusing only on the conversation because it's taking a lot more energy from your brain. So you have to focus at one thing only. And the reason for that is because our brain doesn't deal really well with multitasking. Okay, so it's amazing. Our brain is amazing, but it has some limitations. And I would like to talk about 3 limitations that are actually the attention, working memory, and speed. So these 3 factors are affected when we try to multitask. So in terms of working memory, when we are switching between tasks, our brain needs to put a lot more effort on the working memory to memorize what it's doing at the different points in time, right? Then the attention is switching between one thing and the other thing. And finally, it needs to do this at a really high speed for us not to lose track of what we are doing, which increases the amount of mistakes, errors that we make during the tasks. Okay, so I want to try a really simple exercise, and everyone can have their microphones on mute at this moment, because I will explain. So let's do a quick exercise, okay? Just say out loud the numbers from 1 till 9. So it can be on your own language, so that's even better. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
1, 2, 3.
The microphone's on mute? Yes. Okay, so now do the same but with the alphabet, from A till I. How fast can you go? A, B, C, D. Right? It's quite simple. Now let's make it a little bit harder. So what if you intercalate? So you say 1A, 2B. So how fast can you go from 1A to 9I? It's taking a little bit longer, right? Exactly. And I could see only Jane's face, but it's very interesting because what happened is that you actually closed your eyes while you were doing it, right? And the reason why, it's because if your eyes are open, you have extra input coming into your brain. So then you close your eyes, so at least that input you're gonna ignore and get, because what you're doing is actually switching between two tasks. What happens is that it takes way longer to do both tasks at the same time. And also you're gonna make more mistakes. So I don't know if you did because we are not in the same room, but that is what happens when you try to multitask during your day. Also, your brain is working extra hard. So what happens is that you have a feeling that, you know, like you're doing everything at the same time when you're working, you're checking your email, and that's perfectly okay because you don't notice this is happening on the background, right? So then you get super tired by the end of the day, and you don't really understand why. Some days you're more tired than other days. So why is that? What happened? You know, what type of task am I doing that is, you know, spending so much energy? And there's actually a new report that just came out that shows that 28% of time of knowledge workers is lost due to distraction during 1 year. So that's like more than a quarter of your working time is lost due to distractions. So that's pretty big. Now, with the appearance of the digital devices, that got even worse, right? Because now it's really difficult to stay in control of your attention. And the way your attention works is also changing. Now you have a lot more external stimuli, okay, than ever before. And this constant task switching, it's really difficult for you to be focused on one task that you have at hand, right? Just focusing on the same task. So when there's a notification on your phone, and this is something very interesting that we never think about, what your brain sees is actually kind of a slot machine. The reason for that is that we have different brain chemicals, hormones, being released in our brain. One of them is called dopamine, which is released when we find something that we are looking for, when we achieve something that we wanted, like we finish a task, for example, you go for a run and you were able to finish that run. So you get like this release of dopamine. So it kind of gives you a pleasure and happiness kind of feeling. It's also being released when you're gambling, right? So that's the type of, it's kind of a nice drug that we have. What happens with the phone is actually when you have a notification, because you don't know what you're gonna get, you get that dopamine boost. So then it's like, okay, let me check what's coming, you know? It might be nothing important, but maybe there's something super nice that I never thought I would receive on my phone. not really, like we don't think about this all the time, but that's what your brain is thinking, right? So you grab your phone, and how many times did it happen that after, you know, like checking your phone for a little bit, just for that specific email you're checking, and then you end up in another page, and then you end up on Instagram, and then after 20 minutes you're still on Instagram. I'm like, what am I doing on Instagram? How did I get here? I was finishing the report, right? So what happened, you know? And 20-30 minutes passed by. The reason is that every time you refresh the news feed, there's this dopamine boost, okay, and get you addicted to the feeling of, you know, checking your news feed. You're not paying attention to what you're seeing most of the times. You know, you're not doing anything important. It's not really what is your intention behind it. You didn't think about it. It's just so automatic that we do it. And if it happens, you know, like you can get this dopamine boost so simply, why wouldn't you, right? It's right there, it's your phone, you're in like an uncomfortable situation, so let me check my phone. It doesn't mean, the thing is, and I have another slide, I talk about this and then I forget to switch slides, but what happens is that actually just because you like chocolate, and I love chocolate, for example, it doesn't mean that I should be eating chocolate every day, all day, right? So that's not going to be good for my health. It's the same as with this type of dopamine boost that we get from checking our phone. It's not healthy in the long term, in the long run. And as a humans, everything we do is to avoid discomfort. And it's actually called the homeostatic response. So the psychologists might know this a little bit. So it's actually, we run away from discomfort. When you're finalizing this report and it gets super tricky, you know, like you have to make that extra effort to understand what you're going to write and so on. This difficult task, you're in an uncomfortable situation. So what's the best thing you can do? Just go and check your phone. So our phones or our devices in general are constantly asking for our attention. So how can we be in control of our attention? So what can we really do about this? And now I'm going to give you some tips on how to avoid the distractions, okay? Feel free to write any questions you might have on the chat about everything I said before. And now we're going to go a little bit deeper into what can we really do about this. So I would start with something that I call a distractions audit. So most of us are working from home at the moment, or even if you're not working from home, this is also applicable. Our environments are full of distractions. So by doing a distraction audit, you're going to look for all the things that might be distracting, you know, to you during the day. You can take one day to focus on this, to be aware. Just take like a notepad next to you and think about like, what are the distractions that are happening, you know, around me at this moment? So is it my TV? Am I facing my TV? Am I facing my kitchen, and right before lunch I'm starving and I'm just thinking about my kitchen and the food that is in the fridge? Is it like my kids that are playing around? It could also be. So what distractions do you have? So just write those down. And with that, what you can do is create a distraction-free environment. You can think of the external triggers and the internal triggers. So external triggers could be something like your phone, the TV, and so on. So things that are on your environment. Internal triggers, the things that are within you that come up during the day. And I'll go into the internal triggers in a bit because that's a little bit more difficult, I would say, to deal with. Then having a dedicated workspace. This is also very helpful for your health in terms of having a space in your home that you use for working, that it's not, you know, it could be your office. Ideally, you would have like a different room where you can have just your office, you go there just for working. So ideal situation would be that. If you live in Amsterdam, that's a little bit trickier because the houses are super small and very expensive. So what I would suggest, the next option is to have a desk, you know, just a place, even if it's like a small table, not like a super ergonomic desk, just a table, a place where you can go to work. Some people even put like some tape around the desk. So it kind of makes your brain understand that when you move into that area, you're going into your working area. That's the place where you work, right? So that could definitely help, having a dedicated workspace that is distraction free. So, you know, after doing the audit, you create this distraction free environment with dedicated workspace. Then very importantly, what are your external triggers that are going and coming in your way to be focused? Most of the times are notifications. Notifications could be your phone. It could also be on your laptop, right? So try to understand what notifications are taking away my attention. So, and work on those. Like, do I need these notifications? If so, do I need them every day, all day? Do I really need to reply to this email at this moment or not? You know, a way to work with this is scheduling your time. So something that I do that I find really helpful is actually create kind of a time box, everything time box. So everything that I do is scheduled during the day. For example, email. So in the morning, I have my breakfast and so on. Then I start working. When I start working, my first task is actually on my schedule to flag the email. So every email that I received, you know, like during the evening and so on, I will flag them. So I will say, okay, so this email I need to work on today, this one this week, and so on. So everything is flagged. And I don't need to reply to them straight away in the morning, right? So then I schedule some time to work on something else, and then I schedule time to reply to emails and flag the extra emails that I got, you know, throughout this day. It's important that the email is not on all the time because I don't really need it, right? Only if there is this very important customer that I need to reply straight away after and so on, then my email is on. Otherwise, it's just a way of, you know, bringing my attention to a place where it doesn't need to be. So I think that really works. Scheduling your time. So you're also in control of everything you want to do throughout the day. Some people use the to-do list. I also use the to-do list, but it cannot be only the to-do list, because what tends to happen is that, okay, it's super clear what you need to do, but when are you going to do it? What if you get lost on Instagram for 20 minutes? Like, oh, maybe I'm not going to be able to finish this task that I started working on, right? So try to schedule everything that you want to do during your day. So then you're in complete control. You are sure that what you're doing is what you want to be doing. Then acknowledging the internal triggers. And for me, this is one of the most difficult ones. Imagine that you already have this distraction-free environment, but still you're thinking, for example, it could happen that I'm going to go running after work. And then I'm working on something and I find it quite hard. And then suddenly I have this thought, oh, I need to do my laundry because I don't have the leggings to go running. So in the first place, why was I thinking about running when I'm trying to work, right? So try to acknowledge it. So don't pretend it didn't happen and don't force it to go away. That doesn't help. At first, you can even try to do like put it on your agenda, what happened, what time it happened, that this thought came into my mind that, you know, like wanted me to start doing something else. What were you feeling at that moment? What were you doing? So then you try to find a relationship, and it's important to acknowledge it exists. Okay, so don't try to ignore it. It's internal, so it's something that you're feeling. It's important to be aware of it, right? And then plan time for focused work. this I find really helpful when you're working with more people at your place, right? Because I call them library hours, actually. So imagine that you have your family around, your kids, everyone's situation is different, but you have to work on something that you really want to focus, right? So all the notifications are off, the environment is perfect, no distractions that you can see or hear, but then still there is some movement in the house. So try and plan kind of a library hours. Imagine from 10 to 12, nobody can bother me, right? Only if it's something urgent, but otherwise, this is my time to work, and have that as a rule, for the people you live with, because it's applicable to you, but also to the different people, also from your colleagues. So let them know if you work, for example, with Slack, that from this 10 till 12, imagine my Slack will be off. I'll be working, but my Slack will be off. If it's urgent, just reach me by phone, whatever. So try to think of this, like, have time to do your focus work that you're sure that you are in control and nobody's gonna be in the way of that. And finally, have an end of day routine. And I really like this one. Actually, Microsoft Teams, now they came up with a new feature that they call virtual commute. Because what it does is, like, 15 minutes before the end of your shift, you get a pop-up message. And this pop-up message says, okay, which tasks did you do from your to-do list? So you have to check all the tasks that you did. And then it has a second question. So the ones that you didn't do, they are going to the next day. You can always change it. But and then you have a second question, how was your day? So and then they use emojis like a smiley face, a neutral face, and a sad face. So you think about what happened during the day. And finally, it takes you to a guided meditation session, because they partner with Headspace. So I don't say for you to get Microsoft Teams. That's not what I'm saying. It's more to apply this idea to your day. It's not just because of the distractions, but a way for you to switch between working modes and house or home modes, right? Leisure, relaxing time. Because now, or throughout our lives, we were going to school, even from when we were kids, we're going outside and then going to school and then coming back home. To work, the same thing. And all of a sudden, we don't have to go outside anymore just to go shopping. It's very healthy if you go outside, be in nature, right? But you don't have to do it to go to work. So by having these kind of triggers, your brain will understand, okay, now it's time for me to focus, right? When you're working, and then end of the day routine, you do, for example, the to-do list, which is quite simple. Think about your day. What did you achieve? What didn't you achieve? And have everything written down. So then you can close your laptop and put it out of sight. Okay, that's also very, very important, that you don't look at it more like during the day. So then okay, my working day is done and I'm gonna be relaxing or doing whatever I want to do with the rest of my time. Now, finally, just the small tips on controlling your attention, because that's very, very difficult to do now. And because we are always switching our attention from place to place, it's difficult to focus on one thing at a time. So something that I've done before and was super, super helpful is deep reading challenge. So to take a challenge for example, 2 weeks, read for 20 minutes a day, make it a rule. Like don't go through a day without reading 20 minutes. If you're not used to reading, actually it's going to happen is after the first page, your brain is thinking about something else, right? And then you're like, oh, okay, I don't know what I was reading anymore. So try to be mindful when you're reading. So you're here, you're reading, when your thoughts go somewhere else, and that's okay, because that happens, try to bring the awareness back to the book. So acknowledge your thoughts are going somewhere else, and then be gentle to yourself and don't get upset because your thoughts went somewhere else. Like, it happens, it's completely fine. just acknowledge it and bring it back, bring your awareness back to the book, and do this for 20 minutes. And see, I really challenge you to do this and see how you are after 2 weeks of reading 2 minutes a day. I think that's something that you can do and really improves your attention, your ability to focus on what you're doing, your task at hand. Then mindfulness and meditation, it's because of the same principle. It's thinking at one thing at a time. So focusing on, for example, the breathing in and breathing out, right? So just take 5-10 minutes a day and do some mindfulness, some meditation. So just by having this time for you to acknowledge what you're feeling and your thoughts are going somewhere else, and that's completely okay, just as long as you are aware of it and you bring it back and then breathe in, breathe out. That also helps restoring your attention. And finally, getting into nature. So there's something that it's called attention restoration theory, which shows that every time we go to nature, actually what we are doing is that we are avoiding all the external stimuli. For example, from being in the city center, which is very busy, you have all these stimuli coming from everywhere. And going into nature, you're just going to be present. Okay, so it's a nice exercise to do, is to focus and being present while you are in nature, because everything moves slowly, and then you can take the time and focus on your attention on what you're seeing. It's also been shown that the cortisol levels, cortisol is like a stress hormone, they actually decrease every time you go into nature. So then it's kind of also helping deal with stress just by being in nature, being with nature around you, it already helps. Okay. And that was it from me. So I hope it was helpful. I hope you liked it. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Which other?
Cortisol and dopamine. Hi, thank you for that. I don't know, Jane, did you want to say something first?
No, you go ahead. That's fine.
So thanks, Ines. I had a few specific questions because what I've noticed also just from myself as someone who's